Hey, I'm Amelia Mosley and you're watching a BTN special all about global citizenship. Here's what's coming up. We learn more about the history of the United Nations and find out more about the Nobel Prize-winning work of the World Food Programme. But first, you're about to meet some kids who have been trying to save the world. They were taking part in the World Peace Games. It's a very special sort of board game that was invented by a teacher from the US who's showing that kids are actually really good at solving the world's biggest problems. Here's Liv.
What do we want?
Tensions are on the rise in Indian-controlled Kashmir.
The news can be full of complicated problems.
Hong Kong has suspended all flights and
the future outlook of the Great Barrier Reef.
You might wonder, how do we even begin to solve these issues?
Iran's capital, Tehran.
How do we stop people fighting?
China's just made it clear.
And how do we create world peace? They're questions that top world leaders struggle to deal with pretty much every day. But what if I asked you to find the answers? Well, I'm not going to ask you to do that, but this guy might.
I'm John Hunter, the inventor of the World Peace Game and actually the CEO of the World Peace Game Foundation.
The World Peace Game is kind of like a board game, but it's also way more than that.
Oh my, the World Peace Game is a gigantic structural geopolitical simulation. And essentially, we have a number of different countries pitted against each other in every way, politically, socially, militarily, and economically. And they're pitted against each other on 4 different levels: outer space, aircraft level, ground and sea, and undersea level. And the children who are playing these roles of cabinets and agencies in the world have to sort through all of this chaos and actually create solutions to solve some of the world's toughest problems.
At the beginning of the game, the participants get detailed documents explaining the problems they have to solve and get assigned different roles within the game.
The Minister of Defence.
There's Prime Ministers, Chief Financial Officers, and a heap of different staff in organisations like the United Nations and the World Bank. And then they have to work together to figure it all out.
I don't know if it's big enough. A way to solve that is to all work together. So basically, each country has a budget from the beginning, and you win the game by each country's budget being higher than before, and all 23 crises solved.
John says he came up with the game when he first started working as a teacher and had to teach his students about what was going on in Africa.
I thought, how am I going to do that? It's a very complex place. But I thought I'd make a game of it.
Since then, it's grown to include problems facing the entire world.
We have everything from ethnic and religious and minority rights and problems, religious struggles. We have breakaway republics. We have water and famine issues. We have poverty. We have pollution. We have fishing rights issues. Everything we have in the world, cyber warfare, all of that is in the World Peace Game. We just sort of rip it from the headlines and modify it appropriately for children. And in a bloodless way, they always, always, always save the world.
John says that while it is possible to lose the game, that's never happened. And he reckons it shows that kids are actually pretty amazing at this stuff. And while it's difficult, these guys say it's really fun.
So it's helping me to understand more of the values and things you need to learn for life.
I think it's a big challenge to solve the problems in the world. Obviously, there's a lot more problems than just on this game board behind me.
It's the best feeling in the world when you solve a crisis and everyone's like jumping around like, yeah, we solved a crisis.
It's solved!
I think for generations to come, this is going to be the game that is helping to bring up new leaders and all people who want to help save the world.
Next up, we're going to take a look at a really important organisation, the United Nations. It's made up of 193 countries who have all agreed to work together to make the world a safer and better place. Take a look.
In one of the busiest cities in the world, between iconic buildings and hot dog stands, sits the headquarters of an international organisation with one mission: world peace. I'm talking, of course, about the United Nations, or the UN for short. You've probably heard of it before. The UN first became a thing in 1945, just after the Second World War. the big Allied Four wanted to prevent another huge war from ever happening again. So they formed a new organisation designed to do just that.
San Francisco, California, a momentous conference begins. Here, leaders of the United Nations, representing all but a fraction of the Earth's population, are laying the foundations of international security in the post-war world.
On the 25th of April 1945, 850 representatives from 50 countries met in what was, at the time, the largest international gathering ever. The end result was this, the United Nations Charter. It's a legally binding contract between all the countries involved and includes all the things the UN wants to achieve, like getting rid of poverty and disease, providing food and aid to those who need it, improving health services, disaster relief, protecting human rights, and making sure countries follow international laws.
First to sign is China.
On the 24th of July 1945, after a bunch of revisions, it was agreed upon and signed by all the countries involved. And a couple of months later, on the 24th of October, it came into force, the date we now mark as the UN's birthday. Today, the United Nations consists of 193 countries and has accomplished a lot of the things it first set out to do. It's managed by the Security Council, which is made up by 5 permanent members: France, Britain, the United States, China, and Russia. They're in charge of helping countries resolve conflicts.
I now give the floor to the Secretary.
To help make any decisions, the UN holds a General Assembly, which is overseen by this guy, Antonio Guterres, the UN Secretary-General. It's held every year in September at New York headquarters. A lot of people are invited to speak there, and it's given many people, not just politicians, a platform to have their voice heard.
Pay full attention to what the youth is asking here.
Even Beyoncé has belted out a ballad for the Assembly. You sure were, Beyoncé, you sure were. The United Nations now has a bunch of specialised agencies, like the World Health Organization and UNICEF, which helps to improve the lives of kids, especially those in disadvantaged areas. While it all sounds pretty good, the organisation has some critics who say the United Nations isn't as effective as it should be, that it favours some countries over others, and that it spends way too much money to operate.
On United Nations Day,
but as the UN turned 75, lots of people helped celebrate what it has accomplished and what it can still achieve.
Which of these is not an organisation run by the United Nations? Is it the World Health Organization, the Red Cross, or the International Monetary Fund? It's the Red Cross. The humanitarian organisation dates all the way back to 1863. Finally today, you've probably heard of the Nobel Prizes. They're really famous awards that recognise the work of the world's top scientists and doctors and writers and economists. There's also the Nobel Peace Prize, which in 2020 went to the World Food Programme. Nat found out more about it.
Welcome to the Nobel Peace Prize Hall of Fame. Not the real one. The list of world leaders, passionate campaigners and famous institutions that have worked hard to make the world a better place. And now, there's a new member of this prestigious group.
The Norwegian Nobel Committee has decided to award the Nobel Peace Prize for 2020 to the World Food Programme.
The World Food Programme is actually a branch of the United Nations, which is devoted to making sure people have enough to eat.
The World Food Programme was started in 1961 when the US president at the time wanted to test what it would be like providing food aid in humanitarian emergencies.
The test was a success. The World Food Programme saved lives, and since then, it's helped people through some of the world's worst wars, natural disasters, and famines. Cut to today, and they're just as important as ever.
Hunger globally is growing, unfortunately. And when we talk about hunger, we mean that people aren't able to put food on the table.
Gemma works in Bangladesh, where the World Food Programme is helping more than 800,000 Rohingya refugees. They've had to leave everything they had because of violence in their home country. And now COVID-19 is making things even harder.
Our main role here is to ensure that people have food to eat and they have dinner on the table every single night.
But Gemma says her team has a little bit of help.
Let me introduce Foxtrot, who is our WFP mascot who we found on the beach here in Cox's Bazar. He has a very special list of roles and responsibilities at WFP. His number one role is actually to improve staff morale. It can be extremely stressful working in an emergency. There are long hours, lots of challenges to overcome.
Gemma says sometimes workers have to get food into some pretty remote and dangerous places.
There are so many ways that WFP delivers food to people, and it really depends on the situation that we're delivering to. Sometimes in a major emergency or a conflict, then we'll have to use things like helicopters or planes and even do food drops, where we do a flyover and we drop food. Otherwise, we also use trucks, we use boats, we use any methods necessary, really.
But it's not just about emergency relief. The WFP works with farmers and governments to try and prevent hunger. All of this work is expensive. The WFP gets all of its money from voluntary donations made by governments around the world, businesses and ordinary people. Many are hoping the Nobel Prize win will encourage more people to donate, but for the people who work for the World Food Programme, it was a surprising and much appreciated moment of recognition.
This is unbelievable. Talk about the most exciting point in time in your life is the Nobel Peace Prize, and it's because of the WFP family.
It's humbling to be recognised with the Nobel Peace Prize this year, definitely. But I also think it's incredible, not because WFP won, but because this is an opportunity to put hunger on the global agenda again.
As for Foxtrot, well, he's not letting it get to his head, but I'm sure deep down he's pretty pleased with himself.
Did you know Malala Yousafzai was the youngest person ever to win a Nobel Peace Prize? She was 17 when she was awarded for her work promoting girls' education. And that's our look at global citizenship. For more info on all of our specials, including heaps of teacher resources, just head to our website. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll catch you next time. Bye.